Hi, my name is Amory, and I love video games. Some of my first ever memories are with the game New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. I spent hours with that game, playing and replaying it over and over again. With that said, it isn't hard to see that video games have had a huge impact on my life. Ever since I was around 10 years old, I've wanted to be a video game developer. I remember that I wanted to create my own video game engine, because at the time I thought that all of the ones that were available would be either too expensive or beyond my comprehension. So I downloaded a program called Eclipse, and I started learning to program in JavaScript, a coding language I've long since forgotten. The first thing I created with Eclipse was a program that simply opened up a blank 800 by 400 pixel window, and it took me around an hour to get working. The feeling of complete and utter joy I experienced upon seeing that my program worked was something that remains unparalleled to this day. A few years later, I downloaded the free video game engine Unity. I partook in various game jams, competitions where you have a very limited amount of time to completely create a video game, and I started a couple of projects here and there for my own enjoyment. I learned the ins and outs of C#, Unity's native coding language. I started thinking about bigger, more complex, long-term projects. I absolutely loved the entire process of creating a video game. So, it should come as no surprise that for my 10th grade IB project, I decided to create a video game. I would do this using my lifetime of experience as someone who plays lots of video games, and pre-existing knowledge of video game design that came from articles and talks by professional developers from GDC, videos like the ones created by YouTube users Mark Brown, Adam Millard, and Rasputin that outline many concepts of and related to video game design. I wanted to find a way to express the feelings I have when developing a game, which is where my global context comes in. Personal and cultural expression. I planned on creating my game with knowledge of Unity and C#, and to build off of that to make the best project I could. The initial plan I formulated for the project would see me creating a fully fleshed out level for this video game, complete with a boss fight at the end to tie it all together. It was made using an online program that allows for the creation of boards, virtual spaces where you can create reminders in the form of sticky note-like blocks. That was my goal throughout the project, a goal that I would soon see was a little too ambitious. And by soon I mean several months too late for my liking, but more on that later. In order to complete the previously set goal, I had to first do some research. I spent hours poring over videos by creators like Sebastian Legge. One of my favorite resources is GDC, the Game Developers Conference. It's where game developers big and small come together to talk about their design process, or a philosophy of game design that they feel needs more attention, or pretty much anything you can imagine about video game development, design, and creation. I had began the creation of my project with a new empty scene in Unity. Before this project, I'd already been working on perfecting a dialogue system, and I decided to simply use that work in progress in the actual project. It did, of course, need quite a bit of tweaking, as demonstrated in Process Journal number 4. The dialogue system is falling apart. For some reason, triggering dialogue starts a recursive loop where it tries to print new dialogue, but there's no new dialogue to print, so it ends the dialogue, which causes it to try and print new dialogue again, which loops over and over infinitely. I've been trying to fix this for a few hours. The next step in creating my game was working on a movement system, and then the main mechanic of the game, telekinesis. The player is able to cause nearby objects to orbit them, and then throw those objects when they've gathered enough speed. This is used in the final product as the only way to damage the boss, but it was planned to also act as the main mechanic for solving puzzles, among other things. Until about January, I had still been mainly focused on getting all of the mechanics to feel right, and to work together to my liking. This was when I realized that my time to finish the project was going to be over very soon. I began to stress out. I hadn't even started on the level itself, much less the boss. This was the main focus of Project Journal number 3. It has just come to my attention that I now have around a month of time left to work on my project. I have now entered a sort of frantic state, so because I'm so pressed for time right now, I've decided to completely halt work on the first floor, and instead devote every ounce of my energy to the boss fight itself. Because I've moved focus to the fight itself, I now do not need to work on UI elements such as a pause menu or an inventory, both of which I was dreading. It was then that I decided to focus all of my energy from that point on the boss fight, which I felt was more important to the game and was the part that I was planning on connecting more to my global context. I scrapped the ideas I'd had for the level, and then time passed. I soon had another, similar realization to the last. Now I only had a couple weeks to finish my project. I'm a bad procrastinator, so I had actually expected something like that, but I hadn't ever considered it getting as bad as it ended up being. So I started to work harder, and I did eventually finish it. My main criteria for this project was to create a video game that was fun for people, and one that I had a good time making. I believe I met this criteria. I definitely had a fun time making it, and I do think that it's something that people can enjoy, despite its pretty short completion time. While I may not have been able to finish the entire first level, I completed what I feel is the most important part, the boss fight. I'm pretty proud of it too. I know it might not be the best demo, but my final product's got a flair of my own personality that I think people can feel, which is something I can take pride in. My final product helped me in achieving my goal in that it acted as the representation for my global context, and it basically was the goal itself. My project connects to my global context in that it represents how I felt while I was creating the game. The boss fight is designed to make the player feel triumphant after they complete it, like how I felt after the completion of my project. It's also quite difficult and often unforgiving, especially with certain attacks that leave very little room for error. At the beginning of the project, I felt like I was taking a bit of a gamble. I knew the project would be tough to complete and get to a point to where I was satisfied with it. That's what inspired the boss's sleight of hand magician design and her playing card attack patterns, things which are commonly associated with casinos. The introduction to the fight shows you a formidable opponent, but one that seems manageable enough, another interpretation of what I thought the project was going to be at the beginning. Things slowly start spiraling out of control as you get closer to completing your goal. As I neared the end of my project, I wrote in process journal number 10. All that's left after the actual fight is to create her intro and make the tutorial scene, and then I'm done. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the project so far, but right now it feels unfinished. But I think that finishing all of that will make it much more impressive. Ultimately, my IB project did meet my goal. The goal was, however, changed in the process of making my game. Thanks to the project, I've realized that making a video game is definitely an achievable goal. I also discovered that I enjoy creating games even more than I'd originally thought. I learned that despite massive setbacks, I have the ability to push through and continue working in an effort to reach an end goal. A couple of process journals come to mind, specifically number 5 and number 9. Process journal number 5. I just found the wellspring of loading issues, gotta fix those now. If the player holds an item upon going through a loading zone, the game freaks out, and now the loading screen refuses to disappear. Process journal number 9. I haven't made nearly as much progress on the boss as I'd have liked. I had been planning on showing the boss fight to my supervisor last week, but I didn't make enough headway on it to be confident in showing it to him. Anyways, to make up for last week, I'm going to need to pull out all the stops for this project now. Now I do still have other projects to deal with, but this is going to be top priority. Having this new, longer than usual term experience of continuously working on a project has allowed me to take a step back and see what I'm really able to accomplish if I put my mind to something. If I were to do this project again, I'd definitely put more time into it. I also feel like if I'd been more focused on the final product as a whole instead of each individual piece, I would have been able to create something that aligned more with my original goal. Doing this would likely have allowed me everything I would have needed to fully complete the first floor. But another thing that this project taught me is that it wasn't ever actually about the first level. It was about creating a product that I can be proud of, something that I can look at and be able to say, I worked really hard on this, and I'm glad I got to see it through to the end, even if the end wasn't what I had initially planned. Throughout this whole process, I've asked myself one main question. What will I do with this once I'm done? When I first thought about that question, I was convinced I'd be spending more time on the game after I completed the project, that I'd continue to work on it over the next few years. But more recently, to be completely honest, I haven't really had the drive to continue with it. I might revisit it in the future, but for now I think I'm going to be done with this project. Sure, I had a lot of fun with it, but I've had so many ideas since starting this, and I really want to try making some other, more varied games soon. I learned quite a bit from this project, mainly things about myself and my work habits for longer-term projects. I definitely still need to work on my procrastination and motivation problems, but with the help of this project, I've been able to better hone in on the actual issues, and I'm hopefully one step closer to eliminating them entirely. I've had a great time with this whole thing, and I can't wait to continue working on projects like this in the future. Thank you. So yeah, I've just finished editing the video and everything, and I'm pretty much done with my project. Just to end this off, I wanted to give a couple of thanks, especially to my project supervisor, Mr. Glenn, and my history teacher, Mr. Rico. I couldn't have done the IB project without them. I mean, it's true that I literally would not have been able to do the IB project without them, because I couldn't have gotten any of the papers or anything, but they also made the whole thing like a bunch easier. Another thanks to my friends and family for being so chill about the whole project. There were a couple events that I couldn't attend because I was working on my project, especially around the end here. And they were super understanding that I had to finish this. Probably the biggest sources for this project, both for inspiration and information, come from Mark Brown, Adam Millard, Rasputin, Mix and Jam, and Sebastian Legge. If you're interested in video game development, you should definitely check them out. They all run very informative YouTube channels. If you're looking to start creating video games on your own, then I probably recommend just downloading a game engine and going for it. A great YouTube channel if you want to get into learning Unity specifically. It's called Brackies. They have a bunch of tutorials on their channel that are great for just quick lessons. Again, GDC is another incredible source. It really is. It's pretty cool to see how professional game developers solve problems that you might even have in your game development process. So yeah, and don't forget that if you're trying to get into game development, it's always a great idea to study your favorite works. If there's a game that you're really into or you're really interested in, just take a look at it and see why you like it so much, and then maybe you'll be able to use the stuff you've learned in games of your own that other people will love one day. Something I forgot to mention in the video is that there were a couple of things that I worked really hard on, but they didn't end up making it into the final game. I think the biggest one would probably be the enemy pathfinding AI. That would have been used to just have enemies home in on you, and there's going to be like a whole attack patterns and stuff. But it never actually saw use in the final build, so it's just left sitting there. It is still going. It is still in the game files. Anyway, I was really proud of that pathfinding algorithm, and I made it by adapting some pseudocode from one of Sebastian Legge's videos about the A-star pathfinding system, and I spent a couple of days tuning it and getting it all ready for modular use. I was really happy when I got my head around how it works. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my IB project.